Yes, please.
Great. So today we have what I think is a very exciting game plan. This is session number, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 4th session out of 12 sessions that we're doing, where I'm talking about the chapter with you. So that makes us 1/3 of the way through the class today. Isn't that amazing? 1/3 of the way through. Y'all have made it 1/3 of the way through. Yeah? And you've done it. You've gotten homework done. I was able to email everybody and read over everybody's homework assignments yesterday and email you and your accountability partner, i.e. your director, about how you've, what you're doing, what you still need. I hope that's helpful information for you. For some of you, I have given you feedback on your forms. So if you turn in something to me and I read through it and I'm like, that will work, I will send you something that says like, well written, awesome, this is good. If I send you back feedback like that, you don't have to change anything. If I send you feedback saying you need to add a sentence about this, you need to add this telephone number, you need to check the example and do it again, you need to do it again. Why? You need to do it again because I'm not the one grading your work. I'm helping you get it done. I'm not the one grading it. The person that grades your work is going to be at the very end of the class. They're going to come to your center. They're going to watch you teach. They're going to read through everything you've written. If they read through your stuff and say, oh, shoot, she left out the number. She didn't write enough. She, wrote something completely different than what we want. They'll just leave. They won't stay there and say, you know what, you need to fix this, this, and this. They'll just leave and not pass you. And I don't want that to happen for you. So if I tell you to make a change when I write you back on a writing assignment and say, add this, or look at the example and do it again, please do it again. And it'd be best if you sent it back to me and said, hey, I did it again. Can you look at it again? Just check it for me and see, do I have everything that I need on here? I'm not trying to be mean and make you do it again just for fun for me. I want you to really be stress-free the day that that visitor comes and be sure that everything you have is ready to go. Does anybody have a question about that? If you do, feel free to email me. Feel free to text me. I will turn the sound off this phone so we don't get weird pings and stuff going on. Text, email, you can call me during the week. If you text me, put your name in the text and tell me what class you're from, because I have 2 classes and I don't have people's emails in my contact or telephone numbers in my contact list. So if you say, hey, I'm from your class, what are we doing about this? Hello, who are you? So tell me who you are, what class. All right, today is going to be super special because today we are going to start our writing activities for class. So some people call them activities, some people call them lesson plans. It's writing activities that are specific for the chapter we're studying. And for fun and excitement, you're going to get 2 chances to practice today, because in the physical chapter, the one we're doing today, it has 2 different lesson plans that we have to create. In order to make sure everybody's successful, I am going to stop talking about the chapter at 11 o'clock today, and we're going to focus down on creating the activities and the writing assignment. I want to make sure everybody's successful at this and gets a good foundation before you do it on your own. All right. Let me move to share the screen to finish up our environments chapter. There we go. And we are going to be moving through this at a faster clip than we did last class because we didn't finish last time. That's not cool. So routines and procedures. We had started talking about this last time and then we ran out of time. So let's just kind of go over it. You should have read about this in your chapter this week. But if you haven't gotten around to that yet, routines are things that you do every day. We discussed your routine for maybe getting out of bed and getting to work. So maybe you get out of bed and you go to the bathroom and you brush your teeth and you take a shower. That's something that happens every day to get you to work. A procedure could be, how do I take a shower? Do I turn on the water and make it hot first? Then do I grab a clean towel? Then do I get in the shower? That's a procedure. We need to have both of these in our classrooms. Off the top of your head, can anybody shout out, what is a routine in your classroom? What is a series of events that happens every day?
Washing the changing table.
Okay, cleaning the changing table between kids. Maybe your routine is how you change all the diapers, you know, deciding who gets called when, how you go get them, bring them over. Do they pick their own diaper? Do they carry things? That would be a routine. I heard maybe the routine of we wash our hands when we come in the classroom before we sit down at the table. That would be a routine. Types of routines. We have routines for how we greet our friends, how we ask the teacher for help, how do we enter a play group. For self-care, routines about when we wash our hands, when we use the potty, throwing trash away after meals. Routines for how we stack blocks. So a lot of teachers have rules about how high you can stack the blocks and where you can sit around the blocks. Okay, so those are kinds of routines. Procedure is step-by-step how to do something. This is an example of a hand washing procedure that is posted in a bathroom for children to use. This one, they tried to get the most bang for their buck they could on this. They did the actual pictures of the children in the classroom doing the steps so that they could like relate to it better. They did numbers. You can see they have the written 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then underneath that, they have it written out in text 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then they have just the dots next to it. So they were really trying to help the kids with their numeracy and literacy while doing the procedure. Do you have to do that? No, but it might be fun to try every once in a while. Why do we have the procedure posted? It's to make sure, to support children in doing a task. Usually it's a task that if it's not supported, steps are going to be left out. So if you just send kids to wash their hands and you don't teach them about how to wash their hands, they may go turn on the water and splash it around a bit and leave. And they'll be like, I wash my hands. But we as teachers are showing them, you know, this is how you lather up your hands. This is how long, this is what song you need to sing to get 20 seconds of hand wash time. What is our song of preference right now?
The birthday song.
We actually timed that in class the other day. In person, we sang it and we timed it, and it was about 20 seconds. It was pretty spot on.
Some of our kids sing the alphabet.
What, Layla?
Some of our kids sing the alphabet.
The alphabet too? Okay. Whatever works for you to get around that 20 seconds. So those are all parts of the procedure that you have to teach kids specifically, and you can't just teach it one time. You have to reteach and make sure it's a part of the culture of the classroom. Here's another example of when you could use a procedure. This is the art easel area. This wasn't a 4-year-old classroom. You could probably get away with it in a 2-year-old classroom or older. But step 1 on here is to put on a smock. Step 2 is to write your name on the paper. Step 3 is to paint. Step 4 is to put your picture on the drying rack. And step 5 is to wash your paintbrushes. But anything that you want children to have that additional support in the classroom, you can make a procedure for. You could make a procedure for how to use the sensory table. Like it could say, number 1, go wash your hands. Number 2, play in the sensory table. Number 3, go wash your hands. I mean, as easy as that. NAEYC, which is the National Association for the Education of Young Children, emphasizes the importance of having predictability and structure in a daily routine for children so that children feel secure. And once they feel secure, then they're able to expand their creativity, expand their exploration. All right, when you're teaching a new routine and procedure, it is best to act it out with the children. That's called modeling. And that is a word you might need to know going forward. So when we say modeling, we're not necessarily talking about, you know, going on the catwalk with your fancy clothes and strutting. Instead, we're talking about demonstrating how to do it. So when a teacher says, I am going to model how to wash my hands, the teacher will talk through what she's doing while she's washing her hands. She's not just going to do it, she's going to talk through the steps to really put it out there for the kids exactly what's happening so they don't have to figure it out. So as the teacher's modeling something, let's say the teacher's modeling how to eat lunch. Okay, so the teacher's sitting down, she has her plate, she's sitting at the same table with the children, and she's saying, oh, to eat my lunch, I'm first going to take a little bite of my peach. And I'm gonna put my fork in my peach, and I'm gonna chew it up really good. And then I'm gonna swallow it. And now I can eat something else. I wonder what I'm gonna pick next to try. I'm gonna try a little bit of the chicken. And I'm gonna chew it up really good. And then I'm gonna swallow. Let's see, what can I try next? So that's modeling. You talk it through as you're doing it. What else could you model for children for them to learn? And you can put it in chat or you can shout out. What else could you model for them to learn?
How to use the spoon or fork?
Sure, especially in an infant room, right?
Brushing their teeth.
Brushing teeth, sure.
In my toddler class, we're teaching them how to wipe themselves. So like sometimes during diaper changing, I'll have them, here you clean, and then they'll try to practice, and then I'll just go right underneath behind them and just clean. So they can obviously get clean, but it kind of teaches them individuality. So that's what we're working on right now with them.
Great, that is a good life skill to know, how to clean your bottom. Anybody else? Does anybody model how to do a gentle touch in their classroom? Does anybody model how to enter play? How to ask friends to join their play? Does anybody model how to solve problems? These are all things you can talk through out loud and help them figure out how to solve problems, how to make friends, how to do gentle touches. They will be more likely to do it if they see and hear how to do it from you. Multiple times, not just one time. They need to keep hearing it. For routines and procedures, after you model, you can add a visual. So think about that hand washing thing. There's a visual for each step. This is how it happens. Practice, 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 practice. If you want little children to understand the importance of what you're trying to teach, you have to teach it a lot. You can't just teach it once and say, don't you remember last week I told you this is how you wipe your bottom. It takes time to practice to get the confidence and the ability to do it without thinking hard. Integrate it into your daily routine. So you don't need to set aside a time on your lesson plan chart for the month to say, you know what, on Mondays, I'm going to talk about hand washing. And that's it. It should pop up during your day multiple times as you're washing hands. You wash your hands 5 million times a day. You can model it 500,000 times. Don't have to do it every time, but enough that it sticks. And then time to retrain. So you're not just teaching it 1 week and then for the rest of their time in your classroom, it's, I told you, you keep showing them again. Stefania was about, you model how to play safe with children. That's great. Very helpful. I thought I heard somebody about to speak. No. Okay. There's an arrival time routine usually in your classroom. So that's something that you could teach, especially in an older classroom. It could be you go and put your things in your cubby. Step 1. Step 2, wash your hands. Step 3, choose an area and play. It can be as simple as that. And just keep reinforcing it. Why would you want a routine at arrival time? Because there's always somebody that's having an attachment, you know, they're having an issue separating and they might need all your attention. Maybe a parent is having an issue separating and they might need all your attention. So having the kids with a predictable schedule that they know, oh, Miss is busy because Lydia is having a moment. I'm going to go put away my toy, put away my blanket. I'm going to wash my hands and go find a place to play. And we talked about practice makes perfect. All right, transitions. Transitions are how you move from one activity or from one place to the next one. You have a lot of transitions in your day. Can you think of one time or one time of day that you do a transition, for an example?
When we have outside time and we got to get prepared to go outside and come back in.
Yep. So the transition from your classroom to getting the kids outside. Yes, definitely. Getting them back inside is a whole different transition. From going from playtime to eating time. Yes, thank you, Alicia. Anybody else? Getting ready for lunch. That's a big one.
You can do from diaper changing to your next activity. Like for us in the morning, it's diaper change and then getting ready for our morning songs.
Juliet said from eating to napping. Delexa said transitioning from lunch to nap time. That, in my humble opinion, is the hardest transition. There's a lot of things happening, and I'm going to confess right now, I stink at convincing toddlers that they're tired. I'm awful at it. So yes, that is my worst transition in the day. Thank you. Nap to diapering to play. Yes. We use transitions to move children from one activity to another, to fill the time between activities. So sometimes you have transitions that you can't avoid that get built in that suck time up. For example, when I was in colder climate, we had a young toddler classroom that everybody had to get all their snow gear on to go outside. I don't know if you can imagine, but each child having boots, mittens, scarf, snow pants, jacket, hat. Can you even imagine? So you had to find ways to, first of all, get everybody on board with the concept that they need to change clothes. And then the ones that are quicker, how do you amuse them between the time that they're already done and waiting for the other children to get done? So you have to take into account wait time. Kids don't like waiting with nothing to do because it's boring. They will find something to do. You may not like what they find. So transition is planning, what are they going to do? And making something ahead of time that, okay, when they're done, we're going to start singing the outside song, you know, and have them choose songs. And we're going to do that. Maybe we'll have some sort of story time with the one teacher that is assigned to the kids that are already finished, and they can have story time while they're sitting and waiting to go outside. So thinking about how the transitions can be purposefully planned and how they can make the kids not feel like they're just waiting with nothing to do. It should be something somewhat amusing to keep their interest. All right, everybody move to an area of your classroom or move to an area in your space right now. Did you do it? All right, you can come back. You can come back. All right, a lot of our transitions are really abrupt like that, where we tell children, okay, this activity's done, now go somewhere else. It's very unsettling. So for those of you that actually moved when I told you to move, what did you feel about that?
Why?
Why am I moving right now? I've got my camera set up. I'm comfortable. I'm situated. Why am I moving? I don't want to move. Did any of you think that? I don't want to move.
I was just wondering
Go ahead,
why.
Yvette.
I was just wondering why.
Yeah. Why you might have been confused. Alicia said, what do I take with me? I don't know what's happening right now. So instead of me just telling everybody to move, it would have been better for me to tell you where you were going, what you were doing, why, right? All these are good things to know before you tell somebody to go somewhere. So let's say you're transitioning from your inside to outside. You tell the kids, you give them a warning before, right? Okay, we're going to be moving outside. We're going to transition outside. You can even use that big word if you like, vocabulary word. We're going to transition outside because it's our time to play on playground. Maybe you have different playgrounds. On the playground number 1 or playground number 2 today. We need everybody to grab their coats today because it's cold outside. You can think about congestion in your classroom. So if everybody's coats are in this little space by the door, you need to not release 10 toddlers into that space. You need to think about, okay, everybody that has blue shoes, go grab your coat. All right, now everybody that has red shoes, go grab your coat. So you only have a few children at a time going into the space. So letting them know everything, the reasoning behind why they're moving, and keeping in mind traffic flow, because we talked earlier that when toddlers get bunched up together, that's when you have biting and issues because they don't really know how to guard their own space well, and they just bump into each other. Transitions, well, we already did that. All right, so transitions need to be planned. They need to be purposeful. We're not just running around for the sake of running around. They need to be as engaging as possible. One thing that I really like to do with transitions where you have a group of children, so say you have a large group time where you're doing singing and dancing together, and you want the children to transition to free choice play, you could say, all right, Yvette, how are we going to move to our play area today? Yvette, can you show us a way we can move? And maybe Yvette says, I think we should hop like bunnies today. That's a good idea. Yvette says we should try hopping like bunnies today to choose our area. All right, Yvette and Layla, you go first. Hop like bunnies to your area. And you can do like that and let the children have some choice and be in charge. Because when you can give them those little moments of being in charge, toddlers eat that up. They love being in charge. And they're going to fight with you quite a bit about being in charge. So when you can find those little times in the day that you can say, Yvette, you're in charge. Which way are we moving? That's really empowering for them. All right. Another way that you can help out with your transitions, if you're walking in a line or moving as a group, because we all know toddlers are not going to walk in a line. As you move in a group walking outside, have one of the children choose a song. You could say, Layla, can you choose our song for walking outside today? Layla, I see in the chat you just put confused. Is that responding to how it made you feel previously, or are you confused at the moment?
Can you repeat that, please?
I noticed you put you're confused in the chat. Are you confused?
Oh, no, I was confused. When you told us to move to a different room, that's what I was confused about.
Okay,
Like, why did she tell us to move to a different room?
All right. So let's say you have your group of toddlers and you're going to move outside as a group. You could have one of them choose what song we can sing as we're walking together. So that gets the kids more engaged. It puts one of them in charge and you get to practice another song. It's hilarious after Christmas, for like the 3 months after Christmas, they will be choosing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Jingle Bells, and it's fine if they want to sing Jingle Bells in March. If it's okay with your center, I guess. All right. The last part we're going to talk about on this is supporting children that have difficulties with transitions. Some children don't do well being told, stop playing, we're going to do this now. Has anybody ever had a child like that where you said, nope, we're done with this activity, go somewhere else? Ways that you can support children that are having difficulties are give them an advance warning. Remember, when we talked about for health and safety, how you needed to let the baby know before you pick them up or before you wipe their nose, give them a warning. This is the same thing. If you're going to go outside and it's time to go outside, you would let the baby or the toddler know, oh, in a little bit after I change this diaper, I'm going to get everybody ready to go outside. Let them know it's coming, so it's not as shocking. You can have, for some children, a signal. So some classrooms will have a teacher that will choose to flicker the lights a little bit and to get everybody's attention and say, okay, we're going to be going outside in a few minutes, flick, flick, flick on the light. Maybe they have a shaker or a drum. In 5 minutes, we're going to go outside. Sometimes you need to take a look at your schedule. So if you have 25 transitions built into your schedule each day, and you have multiple children that are having difficulties changing activities, maybe you need to look at your schedule and say, can I get rid of some of these transitions? Can we allow a longer playtime here and then go outside after? Strategically placing adults is also good. So if you have a classroom with more than one grown-up, and you know that Heather is going to have a hard time being done with blocks, maybe that extra adult is next to Heather and saying, Heather, in just a minute, we're going to put out the blocks. Here, I've got my blocks, Heather, and here's the basket. We're going to put them together in just a minute. Are you ready? Are you ready? We're going to do it together. Oh, it's time to put away our blocks. Let's put them together in the basket. So that can strategically place your adults to support those children. All right. I am now going to stop sharing that one. We're going to do a quick roll call. See, I remembered on my own. Just because I asked y'all to remind me, it made me remember on my own. I'm very pleased.
Yay.
All right, if I call your name and you are here, let me know, please. Give a shout out or put in the chat when I call your name that you're here. Deluxus, are you here?
I'm here.
Start recording. We're now going to move into our physical chapter. And yeah, it's going to be a thing. Let's get it going. Come on now. All right. And can I still see the chat? All right, I've pulled up the chat. Liz, I can see your face on the screen right now. When you look at the slide, do you see a box like for the chat that's blocking it, or is it okay? It's okay? Great. Wonderful. So we're going to start this morning with a quiz. But don't worry, it's not a graded quiz. It's just to make you think. These are some things that you should know based off of reading your chapters. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to do true or false. If I can see you, you can do an up or down, true, false. If I cannot see you, you can put it in the chat. So, true or false, a toddler can drown in a toilet in 2 minutes. This is from the health and safety chapter. True or false? Seen a lot of people saying true. Thumbs up, true. Yep. True. Okay, so the up arrow is the thumbs up, true. All right, next question, true or false? Should children spend the majority of their day completing activities that have been set up by the teacher? The key word here is majority. Should they spend the majority of their day being directed in what they're doing by the teacher? I have split opinion on here. Let's think about it. Thank you. Let's think about this for a moment. Majority of their day doing activities set up by the teacher means that you have a group of children that you are directing all the time, or most of the time. You're saying, okay, now we're going to do a coloring activity. Here's the coloring activity. Now we're going to eat breakfast. Now we're going to do music and movement together, and I'm going to tell you what songs we're going to be singing. Then we're going to go outside, and I'm going to have you play the game soccer, everybody together. And then I'm going to bring you inside. I'm going to change everybody's diaper, and then we're going to all read a book together. All right, so based off that description, has your answer changed? Okay, so the reason this is a trick question is that word majority, okay? Think about your kids. That free choice play should happen at least twice a day, right? And it should be a good chunk of time. So part of their day is doing activities set up and directed by you. The other part of their day should be choosing what they're going to work on in a free choice style. So that one's false. when you read these questions, and I'm going to point it out to you, the things, the special words that you need to be aware of, because at the end of this course, there will be an exam. And the exam is going to be questions. So you're going to have to read the questions carefully and look for any words that will tell you, you know, what really are they asking me in this question? So the key word here was majority. All right, how long should children and adults rub their hands together with soap before rinsing? A, B, C, or D? Yvette, that's helpful. Thank you. I'm going to check the chat and see what people put. I'm seeing B's and I'm seeing D's. Oops, the chat got really big.
It's a D. It was a D.
Okay, so we're talking ABCs, we're talking happy birthday. If this question comes up on your exam, do not be ashamed to count to yourself while singing happy birthday and seeing how long that takes. Don't be ashamed. Do what you need to do. It is D, 20 seconds. Now, could you rub longer? Sure. But if you have to choose the best answer would be 20 seconds. All right. This is going to be an exciting one for you. Aside from the custodial parent or guardian, to whom may you release the child? Who can you send the child home with? A, to a parent that the child recognizes who lives apart from the child. B, to an individual authorized in writing by the custodial parent and guardian. C, to a sibling. Yvette, I got your answer. Thank you. To a sibling or other close relative of the custodial parent or guardian. D, to anybody that's trusted by at least one person on staff. I'm going to check in the chat and see what kind of responses we have. I'm delighted to see that everybody's choosing B. You are correct. You can't release children to somebody they recognize. That would be bad. That could go terribly bad for you. We usually ask to see IDs, right? If we don't know that person, we need an ID. One thing I really enjoyed about pre-K for SA when I came down here and saw their classrooms is that parents have to every day show their ID at pickup. Every day. No questions, no parents getting angry like, you know who I am. Every day. That's just part of the routine. You show your ID to get the child. That cuts down on when grandma comes to pick up and says, the child knows me. I'm obviously their grandma. Why do you need to see my ID? So if it's just part of your routine, it's less of a hassle when you actually need the ID. You can't just willy-nilly release a child to anybody. It has to be somebody that is legally authorized on their release list. And in order to know that, you need the emergency card, right? That tells who the child can go home with, and an ID to make sure you've got the right person. Well done, people who chose B. All right, following choice time. So this is like free choice time. 12 preschoolers need to use the toilet and wash their hands to prepare for snack. Which of these makes for the best? The key word here is best, transition. So that means that many of these will look okay. You need to pick the one out of all these okay ones that you think is the best. So A is line the children up for the bathroom as soon as they complete their activity. B, toileting the children who need to go potty and wash their hands, and then just use hand wipes for everybody else. C, Have several children wash their hands at the same time while others are in the toilet. D, have a few children at a time prepare while the others are still playing. Remember, we're looking for best. There's one of these here that I think is absolutely ridiculous that I would reject immediately, and that's B. We are not going to use hand wipes if there is an ability to wash hands. That's silly. So of A, C, and D, which is the best? I'm gonna pull up the chat and see how we're doing here. Okay, I see a lot of people chose D as the best. Does anybody have questions about why D is the best? If you do, you can put it in the chat or you can shout out. Okay. What is the main consideration in setting up an infant sleeping schedule? A, the infant's personal rhythms of sleeping and waking. B, the quietest times of the day in your setting. C, the infant's temperament, whether they're calm or fretful. D, the sleeping schedules of other children in the care setting. Best answer. For those of you that are not infant teachers, I apologize. This is going to be more difficult for you. And I am seeing some variety in the answers. So let's talk through this. A says the infant's personal rhythms of sleeping and waking. If you're an infant teacher, your eat schedule for babies and their sleep schedule is personalized. You can't have for a young baby telling them, you know what, you need to stay awake until everybody else goes to sleep. That's not really feasible. So when they're tired, they sleep. When they're not tired, they wake up. That's A. B, choosing the quietest times of the day for them to sleep. If you're at a daycare, the quietest time of the day is nap time, correct? You can't have babies wait until nap time because some of them are only awake for a couple hours a day, it seems, when they're in your care. They sleep, they eat, they poop, they go back to sleep. C, the infant's temperament. That I could see where the temperament one could be confusing, and it is a good answer, but it's not the best answer. The best answer would be, you know, their personal rhythms of sleeping and waking. Their temperament does influence this. So if a baby really has a hard time calming, even if they're sleepy, you're going to have a hard time convincing them to sleep. D, the schedules of the other children in the setting. It's really hard in an infant room because you have babies from 6 weeks, sometimes to 18 months. And the sleep requirements for a 6-week-old and an 18-month-old are very different. The 18-month-old could wait until nap time. The 6-week-old is going to fall asleep quite a few times before nap time happens. All right. Based off of all that, A is the correct response. Infant schedules in an infant classroom need to be individualized to meet their needs because there's such a big range in growth and development in an infant classroom. All right, that was our quiz. So for the physical chapter, we're going to talk about physical development of your 0 through 36-month-old children. We're going to talk about how to promote gross motor development by creating an example of a gross motor activity. We're going to talk about promoting fine motor development by creating a fine motor activity together. And we're going to learn to connect their physical development to the development of the whole child. All right. So some fun facts to know are that the most rapid human growth occurs during their infant and toddler stage. It's good for you to know these two facts, but you don't need to know the vocabulary word that goes with it, okay? So what you do need to know, so if you look at number 1, it's cephalocaudal. You don't need to know the word cephalocaudal, but you do need to know that it's development from top down. So babies develop from top or head down their body. So if you are in an infant room and have the ability to be around little ones, a lot of control happens up here first before it gets down into the rest of their body. They can direct where their eyes go, they can turn their head. They can't pick it up yet, that comes a little bit later, but a lot happens here. The number 2 is proximodistal. You don't need to know that word. You do need to know that it's development from the center of the body out. So we're talking about head down, center out. This is important to know for early development. This could come up later on in the course. It would be good to know to make yourself a note from the head down, from the center out. When we're talking about head down, cephalocaudal comes from the Latin words for head and tail. Babies first learn to control their head as their neck and upper back muscles develop. At 2 months, they begin to actually hold their heads up. 4 to 5 months, they roll over. 6 months, they can sit up when propped. 7 to 8 months, they can get in and out of a sitting position independently and crawl. 10 to 12, they can stand up. 12 to 16, they walk. Proximodistal comes from the Latin words close in and far away. That's from the center out, proximodistal. Infants can move their shoulders before they develop hand muscles. They can move their whole arm before they can do this. Typically, children can hold objects with their whole hand first at 5 to 6 months, thumb and forefinger around 12 months. Hold a spoon well at 16 months, scribble with a fat crayon around 18 months, eat with a fork well after. All right, the order in which all this occurs depends on the development of the individual's brain and nervous system. Because it starts at the brain, that's the head down. And then the inside out is that spinal cord and torso going out to the digits. And I got rid of chat, and I should make sure the chat's up if anybody has questions. Okay, great. All right, reflexes. Has anybody been to a physician as an adult and they've gotten a little hammer and they tap the top of your knee? Okay, I'm going to assume that's a yes. Okay, great. When that happens, it's kind of fun because your leg kicks out and you're just watching it like, huh, I didn't tell it to do that. It just happened. That's a reflex. Reflexes are automatic responses to stimuli. So the stimuli is the little tap with the hammer. The response is your leg kicking out a bit. It occurs without us thinking about it. We didn't think to ourselves, I need to move my leg now. It just happens. Most of these reflexes begin before the child's even born. Most of them are tied to a need to protect us. And most of them disappear within months of the child being born. You have a chart in your textbook that looks like this. You don't have to pull it out right now. When you read your textbook, you will see it. That shows you the reflex, what it is and what they think the purpose of that reflex is, and when it usually disappears. I do have a little video for you to show you some of these reflexes. So that just shows you, for those of you that aren't in a baby room, what some of those look like. I'm sure most of you have seen at least some of these, especially if you have a child of your own. Okay, great. So it showed stepping, rooting. It did not show palmar grasp. Palmar grasp is when you hold out your finger and it touches the baby's hand and they grab it. That's your palmar grasp. You don't need to know these specific, like Morrow and Babinski. You don't need to know those vocabulary words. These others, I think, we use them enough in our culture and in English that we know what they are. Palmar makes sense because it's your palm, right? You put your finger on the baby's palm and they grasp it. Rooting That's like the breastfeeding behavior, right? When they're held and they're hungry and they start moving their head to try to find something to eat. And then the stepping, everybody, I think, that has been around a small baby has put weight on their feet, holding them, and they've, moved their feet up and down. All right. Next bit. Promoting gross motor development. So what is gross motor? This is a vocabulary word you need. You need to know what gross motor is. So if you need to make yourself a note because you don't already know what gross motor is, make yourself a note. You need to know this. Gross motor is the use of large muscle movements of the limbs and torso. So walking or moving from one place to another, crawling from one place to another, scooting from one place to another, all gross motor development. When we talked about the transition of the bunny hops from one place to another, gross motor development, okay? I don't think there's a way that you could do fine motor development to get from point A to point B. You need to use your large muscle groups to really get moving. The next thing to think about for gross motor is giving and receiving objects with force. So I have an object. I'm a toddler. I have an object, the baby in the home area. I'm giving it to somebody that uses gross motor. You see my whole arm is moving, gross motor. If I'm a baby wanting to hand something, I might grab it with my palm or grasp and swing my arm around trying to put it somewhere else. That's gross motor. Stability movements. So if any of you here do any kind of exercise, you will always hear them talking in the class about using your core. Has anybody heard this term before? Use your core muscles. They're talking about your torso, the muscles in your torso that hold you up, the ones that stabilize you when you're walking, when you're sitting up. Those core muscles are a gross motor thing. You can use developmental charts to get general information about how children develop with their gross motor and fine motor skills. These can be affected. So we say children do things in a certain order at a certain time in general. So we talked earlier that a baby can lift their head by this time frame usually, that they can sit up unassisted at this time frame, that they can walk usually by this time frame, that they can use a spoon well at this time frame. Those are generalizations. Some children develop quicker on some things and some children develop slower. What makes the difference? It can be environmental factors such as nutrition and health. During the safety and health chapters, we should have talked about lead poisoning. Some lead poisoning happens when there's old paint around, or there's toys that have been brought in maybe from a different country that doesn't have the same controls on what can be in paint, and the children ingest it, and it affects brain development. Also, what the children are allowed to eat, maybe the pollution in the environment can affect how the child is developing. So that could slow them down. Special needs. Not all children have the same development if there's some sort of developmental delay, or maybe their special need is that they were born without an arm. So they're going to have to figure out different ways to move if they can't use both arms. So that can affect how quickly they learn these skills. The last one, and the most interesting one in my humble opinion, because you can kind of see it happening in your classroom if everybody's healthy, is the cultural expectations. So I have seen this, and I'm going to show you an example too. There are some cultures, like in Texas, what is a big sport that families really get into?
Football.
Yep, football. And when we say football, we're talking American football, right? That ovally shaped ball. Kids are playing catch with it with their families, right? That's a cultural expectation to play catch with that ball. Since that's a cultural expectation, if a family member, let's say mom, is a huge football fan and gets a baby football, right? For her toddler, gets a little one that fits in the toddler's hand and says, we're going to learn to play football. It's going to be super fun. Mommy loves football. Let's go outside every day and we're going to throw the ball to each other and catch it. That child that every day that mom plays catch and throwing with one hand with that football is going to get better at that and be more developed than my mom that doesn't like football. Does that make sense? Because you're practicing that skill and your mom is really into it and giving you all this great feedback. Oh, you caught it. I'm so proud of you. Let's do it again. Yay. And playing with you and having that great time, that child is going to have a really good developed throwing arm and some pretty good eye-hand coordination. What I have seen is not necessarily football. I've been in other places where soccer or European football or what is considered football pretty much everywhere but here, where soccer is the big deal. What skills is soccer developing, do you think? It's not the throwing, right?
Hand foot coordination.
Yeah.
So the ability to kick something well and aim it, right? Deborah said she has a toddler who loves playing basketball, so they're getting that hand-eye coordination with the throwing. Let's look at an example of a toddler kicking a ball, okay? And this is not a toddler that is just in a random classroom where the parents just roll balls to them. This is a toddler where the family's like, you know what, kid? We kick balls in this family. Let's play kickball. All right, so let's look and see what that could look like. And this child's a year and 8 months, it says. I hope everybody's suitably impressed. All right, let me pull back up the. All right, so when a parent focuses on it, you could see that parent was there playing with that child, right? They had set up, they gave them a ball that was usable in that room. That kid was drop kicking that ball like nobody's business. I could not do that, which makes me a little sad. But this kid, it was a cultural expectation. It was rewarded. You got the parent playing with you a lot, which is very rewarding. And so if you focus on it, it develops more and better and quicker. I hope that makes sense. So Deborah, for your toddler that enjoys playing basketball, is your family into basketball? Do you play with the toddler?
I play with him a lot. I love to see him. He does the motions all the time, like he goes like that. And I got an actual little toddler basketball thingy and he loves it. Yeah, and the parents, I asked the mom, and she said, "Oh yeah, he loves playing," and they play with him with the basketball.
So I bet he's better at it than the kids that the families don't.
And the other children, follow him, and they're doing it also. So they love to go play with that basketball. So I always have those balls out, and they love it.
Okay, thank you. So that's all gross motor. Okay, they're using their whole arm, or that baby was using the whole leg. That whole leg was moving. The toe was pointed, so we'll probably have to work on that in the future. But the whole leg was moving and kicking that ball with accuracy.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about there's a wide range. But do you remember, I think it was last class or the class before, we looked at the CDC developmental guidelines. Do you all remember that? It had on there a little section for when to be somewhat worried, right? If your kid's not doing this or this, then it's time for you to reach out to a pediatrician. So here are some things that have been gleaned from that, of times you should be worried. So if a child's 3 to 4 months old and they're not able to lift their head, if at 4 months they don't push down on their legs when they're held up over the floor, if they can't push down, 5 months if they can't roll over, 9 months if they cannot sit up without assistance, 1 year if they can't stand without support, 18 months, they cannot walk. 2 years, they can't push a wheeled toy. 3 years, they can't walk down steps. 4 years, they can't throw a ball overhand. So I hope you all remember from elementary school, throwing overhand versus underhand. And by 4 years, they can't ride a tricycle. Some of these, I think, are ones that we could support children. So, for example, when it gets to like the 1 year, can't stand without support. Usually you need to be interacting with that child and helping them, give them things to pull up on and use their legs and develop those muscles. You don't want to, every time they try to pull themselves up, say, nope, bottom on the floor. Bottom on the floor. We're not climbing on things. So you want to support them. Give them things that they can pull themselves up so that they can really develop those skills and practice standing. Because if you don't have the practice and you can't develop those muscles. 18 months old, they cannot walk. I do have an example. I'm unsure how much had to do with the child's environment and how much had to do with practice. But I had seen a baby at one point that the family left in the crib all the time. And that baby it was a small crib. The baby never really got the opportunity to really move around a lot. And it took that baby a lot of time with a physical therapist to get where they could learn to stand up and support their weight on their legs and get that practice in. 2 years old, cannot push a wheeled toy. So what kinds of toys do you need to have available in your toddler classroom? Push toys, right? If that's one of the things that we're looking for, then we need to make sure we have ways for them to practice. By 3 years, if they cannot walk down steps, a lot of our daycares now, for good reason, are designed with very few steps. Why? Because steps are dangerous, right? The kids are top heavy, they fall, you've got an accident report or something worse. But there are ways that they have different elements that can be added to classrooms to give the children opportunity to practice with steps. Some classrooms will have a step up to get to the water fountain in the school. Some classrooms will have a step up to wash your hands. And when I say a step, I don't just mean one, they'll have like, doo, doo, doo. Some will have for their changing table steps for the kids to walk up to get changed so the caregiver doesn't throw their back out because they get heavy really quick. Yes, Alicia.
Would a ramp be part of that stepping or no?
It wouldn't hurt, right? I mean, it's still developing some balance and alternating feet. So it's better than just being on a flat surface all the time. I do think children need practice alternating their legs going up and down stairs. And that happens with practice. Because when you don't have the practice, you're not confident and you're hanging on to that rail and just which you should be doing anyway. But you're hanging on to the rail, the death grip, right? And you go 1 foot down, then the other one joins. 1 foot down, the other one joins. So giving them, finding opportunities for them to be able to alternate their feet as safely as possible. So it doesn't have to be in a young toddler classroom, but I have seen, you know, steps and ramps built in safely for a young toddler classroom, just inside the classroom because they want the kids to really practice that skill and be able to have the rails and the carpeting and the soft fall surface just in case things don't go how you want them to. 4 years old, can't throw a ball overhand. What toys do they need to have available? Balls. Balls are great. Different sizes, different textures. Your kids in your infant and toddler classrooms are going to throw things. It is what they do. Sometimes it's on accident, sometimes it's not on accident, it's on purpose. Giving them soft balls gives them something to throw. So if they're wanting to throw blocks, you can say, oh, you're throwing the block can hurt somebody, let's go get a ball. And you direct them to where the soft balls are, and they can, you know, maybe you have the hoop, like Deborah said, for them to throw it at. Maybe you have a basket they can throw it at, but they need somewhere that they can aim for, right? Because if they don't have something that you've chosen them to aim for, they're going to find something else because you got to throw it at something. So it's best if you choose, this is the throw zone, this is what you're aiming for, go for it. And make it soft enough so when it smacks Deborah upside the head, Deborah doesn't have to call in sick for the next week because she's got a concussion. So things to keep in mind. Also the tricycle thing. If they've never ridden a tricycle before, come on. That is not an inbred life skill, right? That's not something that you automatically know how to do. So every time you can give them the opportunity to practice alternating their feet and putting that pressure is good. All right, what time is it right now? Let's check. It is 10:21. Let's come back at 10:30. We're gonna do 30 more minutes of intensive, this is the chapter, I think, and then we'll go into writing up our activities. All right, for gross motor development, early childhood educators need to be intentional. They need to plan for physical development. So you can plan for it by setting aside time in your classroom. And we're going to talk about this specifically because in this chapter, there is a section for how to promote gross motor development and a section for how to promote fine motor. I'm going to tell you the pages for that when we discuss the homework. And you will be reading those and writing about how you support gross and fine motor in your classroom today. So we're going to get more into it with the homework assignment, but the gist of the matter is you need to make sure there's time in your schedule for kids to do these large motor movements. Those work best outside, and being aware of what materials would support that outside. So for gross motor, do you have balls? Do you have little riding toys outside? Do you have push toys outside? Do you have heavy things they can carry and move around? All things that would support gross motor outside. Maybe For toddlers, it's really nice that they have something they can dangle from. So maybe you have a bar outside that they can just hang on to and dangle their feet like an inch off the ground, you know, and just build those muscles. All right. I'm not going to do that activity. Moving on. All right, here are some of the things that the textbook lists that you can do to support gross motor. Planning opportunities for children to explore and develop those skills. Daily movement experiences. So if you do a music and movement time in your classroom, that counts as gross motor. If you're getting those kids up and moving. All right, wave your scarf in the air, move your whole arm, side to side, side to side, up and down, up and down. Gross motor movements in music and movement. Introduce games that require to use large muscles. So maybe you have a game of basketball. Maybe you have a game of soccer where you're, you know, rolling the ball to children and they kick it to you. Maybe you have a game where they pretend to be dogs or pretend to be cats and move around the classroom on their hands and knees. So those are kinds of things you can do. It's nice if you have, I don't know if you all have seen these, but gymnastics places or gyms will have a pad they can put down on the floor that's like 2 inches thick for people to do rolls, right? So being able to put your head down and flip your butt over your head to do a forward roll is a gross motor movement. And it's super fun too. Jumping is a gross motor movement. So you can do jumping activities with the kids. Could do specific yoga activities with the kids. And for those of you that their centers are not into official yoga, you can do stretching activities with the kids, moving the whole body. There are different, I'm sorry, this fell out. But like, for example, in this book, you can pick a few different poses and look at the picture with the kids and read about the pose. It has a poem that goes with it. And you could make that into a story time activity where they're moving their whole body. Challenge children to expand their skills. If they need to be taught a skill, think about how you can teach it. So one of the huge skills for an older toddler classroom in particular is learning how to zip up a coat. That's a huge deal. Learning how to button buttons, huge deal, but it needs to be specifically taught. That's not something that is pre-programmed in a human's brain to know how to fit together zippers and pull up. Which that's not gross motor, I apologize, that's fine motor. Back up, delete that last part. Okay. Here are some other things you can do to demonstrate for children gross motor skills. So catching a ball above the waist, which, has anybody ever tried tossing a ball to a young toddler? What happens? Does it just smack them wherever you threw it and then it falls to the ground? And then maybe like 3 seconds later, their hands come together?
Sometimes they cup and they're like, I don't know what to do. They're like,
It's quite amusing. You can't do that though for your fun and amusement, throwing balls at children's faces, you know, that's not good. Don't do that. But instead trying to teach them how to catch the ball. So, you know, try to break it down yourself and think about it. Okay, they can't get their hands together quick enough. Maybe I need to have them hold their hands like this to start with. And I get a ball big enough that I can throw it and it just kind of gently lands in their arms to start with. It could be something like that. You have to change how you throw it, don't you? You have to get really close to them and do a very gentle throw because you don't want it to bounce off of them. So teaching them how to do that, teaching them how to throw, which they usually figure out pretty quick on their own, honestly. But throw with one hand versus throw with two hands. How do you run Again, they usually figure that one out for themselves in your class. But talking about different parts, hopping takes some effort to figure out, especially if you're trying to hop on 1 foot versus 2 feet. They learn the 2 foot hop first, which doesn't get you very far. So, you know, talking about how you can balance and hop on 1 foot, hop on 2 feet, how you move while you're hopping, because sometimes they don't get that, right? They'll start hopping and see everybody else moving and go, why am I not moving? I'm hopping. What's happening? And get frustrated. Skipping. That's an older skill. I wouldn't even bother with a toddler class on skipping, but maybe an older 2 to a 3. Skipping is one where you have to really break it down. So it's like, I'm standing on one leg, I hop forward, and then put it down. Then I pick up the other leg and hop, put it down. So you have to really model, demonstrate, make games with it. All these things to practice. For 3-year-olds, do I have a ball here? I don't have a ball. What could I throw that wouldn't get me in trouble with myself in this space? We can throw this. All right. So let's say I have a softball. All right. Children, I think automatically, I think it is somewhere written in the DNA where they learn that they can just like that. They figure that out pretty quick. However, when you're trying to aim at something and throw it far, that skill is not inborn. So as the teacher, as you see kids are trying to do that, how can you support them? You can think about other grown-ups you've seen teaching their children, and maybe you have to Google it, right? I don't know how to throw properly. How am I going to teach a kid how to? That's what Google's for. That's why we love it. So maybe it's you put your foot forward, you pull your arm back, you aim your arm towards what you're throwing at, and you let go. So maybe it's something like foot forward, arm back. Now I have to go get that, but you get the idea, right? Let me go get it because I need it for something else. Of course, it had to roll under something. But anyway, you get the point. You have to teach them the steps to it. It's like, what's the procedure? Same thing for hand washing, right? What is the procedure? How do we do this? All right. Promoting physical fitness is also in your book. And this may surprise you. So for an infant, toddler, and preschooler, there is a minimum. And minimum means what? What does minimum mean to you?
What's required of us?
The least amount you can do and still get by, right? We usually hear it referred to as the bare minimum, right? What is the least amount of effort I can put into something and still count? So this is the minimum. What is the minimum daily activity needed? And what type of activity? So this is according to the Centers for Disease Control, 80% of adults in the United States over 18 years old do not get the minimum recommended amount of exercise to stay fit and healthy. Does that surprise anybody? It doesn't surprise me. I know I do not get my minimum amount, partially because I'm on the computer a lot, and partially because I don't find it very rewarding. So I'm not motivated to do it. As an infant and toddler teacher, you usually get your 10,000 steps before nap time. So you're usually probably in pretty good shape. But just thinking about the general population, they're not chasing children. They're probably not getting as much exercise as you are. Let's look for an infant. There's no requirement for a minimum, like set aside 10 minutes. They're doing They're doing calisthenics with you. No, that's not a thing. Hilarious, but not a thing. So for infants, what kind of physical activity would you expect?
Tummy time.
Tummy time? Okay,
Maybe
yeah, that
stretch
would be
their arms out.
moving their arms and legs, just experimenting in what can this body do, right?
Exactly.
And so your job as the teacher is setting up the environment so that they can explore that as well as possible. And especially for the ones that can't move from place to place yet, to put interesting things near them and give them the freedom to be on their tummy and, you know, pull that core in and move that neck and move those large muscle groups. That's a gift to those babies every time you give them a supervised tummy time, because that takes a lot of supervision closely on your part. I understand that, but that is a gift every time you allow them to do that. Toddlers, 1.5 hours minimum daily activity. And they break that down into 30 minutes of planned activity and 60 minutes of them choosing. So thinking about in your day, what are some planned movement activities that you do? Could be music and movement time, right? That's planned, that's not 30 minutes. It should not be 30 minutes. That would be cruel and unusual to do that for 30 minutes. Usually music and movement time is 5 minutes, if that. So you could do a couple of those a day, planned music and movement. You could bring your music outside every once in a while, you know, and do let's do head, shoulders, knees, and toes outside. Let's do a tootie tie outside. Let's do ring around the rosy, whatever, right? But something structured. Let's play basketball together outside. That would count as planned activity. Let's kick the ball outside. That counts as a planned activity. And then 60 minutes of unstructured. So they should have free choice time. And in free choice time, they should have parts of the classroom where movement is encouraged. When they go outside, that counts as their unstructured physical activity as well. Deborah, I'm seeing your comment. Yeah. Playing with a ball, basketball, kicking ball, throwing balls. Yeah, balls are a great time. Especially if they're soft enough that they don't cause that concussion to you or knock out a window. Preschooler, 2 hours of minimum daily activity. So 60 minutes planned, 60 minutes unplanned, where they get to pick. So for a preschooler, your music and movement circle time activities can be up to like 15 minutes then. Then you can have a couple of those a day. You could have playing kickball outside together. You could have a big jump rope, depends, right? It depends on your ability to teach jump rope. That's a hard life skill, but planned. So the teacher has to have something like on their schedule that gross motor, planned. All right. So for children to be fit, they need 3 kinds of activities. Aerobic activity, which means their heart gets going. They're working at it. Aerobic activity. For those of you that were alive in the 80s, you don't have to raise your hand if you were. If you were alive in the 80s, do you remember like Richard Simmons sweating with the oldies? Do you remember the Jane Fonda, you know, with the hair and the leotard with the bright colored socks and everything? That is aerobic. Those people were bouncing around like bunny rabbits and they're getting sweaty. They were breathing hard by the end. That's aerobic. Strength activities. So different ways you can develop strength. That's by moving your own body weight or picking up heavy things and moving them. Or, you know, pulling against resistance or pushing against resistance. And then flexibility, stretching your muscles. Flexibility enables children to bend more easily and use a full range of motion in their joints. A lovely way to do that is by dancing or doing the stretching activities. Yeah. All right. We don't have time for that. Okay, so I'm going to stop share. Let's take a look at what we need to do this week, and let's purposefully attack this beast. So get your binder, please. Open it up to page 1 that has the homework listed for you and what we're doing today. We are in the physical chapter. It's the bottom of page 1. That's where we are. So open that sucker up and let's look at it. Read your physical chapter this week. Create an indoor fine motor physical activity. Create an outdoor gross motor physical activity. Then this is the one that's going to be more interesting for you right here. Try one of these activities with your kids. And then share with us on the private Facebook page some sort of, I don't want to say proof, but some sort of, like maybe showing the materials that you got out and set up. Or if your director will allow you, have somebody take a picture of the kids doing it, or you take a picture of the kids doing it, and you can like block their faces. You'd have to ask your director, okay? Because some directors are like, sure, they all have photo releases, fine. And some directors are, okay? So you check with that before you put pictures of kids online. Yes, Alicia?
In the situation that they say no, would it just be like just us doing it? Would that be fine?
Yeah, you can get creative in how you demonstrate you did it. Like you could show the classroom set up for it, you know, and just focus in, hey, I got the balls out today. We're going to do a ball activity where we're rolling the balls to each other. And then you could say how it went. It worked really good right up until, you know, somebody grabbed that ball and pitched it over our heads. Or it worked great. I'm going to do this every week. Everybody should try this. So the reason we're kind of showing the proof is because I want you to have a whack at it, right? You should at least try one of these things instead of it all being just in your head. And mix it up for yourself. You know, we want to see what other people are doing in their classrooms and get some ideas so that we're like, oh yeah, that was a really good idea. I'm going to try that in my room this week. Because we always need ideas for our classroom. We always have these lesson plans we're creating and we're like, I don't know what to do. So seeing different ideas is helpful. Don't leave that part out. We really want to see what you're doing, kind of hear how it went, what you would change next time maybe. So it's like, yeah, I tried to do the ball rolling thing in my classroom. Didn't work quite how I thought. Next time I'm going to try it this way.
Okay, I have a question.
Let's hear it.
So in my classroom, my oldest child I have in my classroom is roughly between 9 and 10 months old.
Awesome.
And that's only one.
Yeah.
All the other ones are about 8 months and younger as they go. So I'm unsure of how I'd be able to set up an activity that would include.
It doesn't have to include the whole class.
Okay, my youngest is only 6 weeks old in there.
The 6-week-old is not going to get the same experience as the 9-month-old. It's not possible. However, maybe you do the activity when the 6-week-old is awake you know, and maybe in a little bouncy seat next to you or something like that, you know, so they're supported and can hear what's going on and kind of see the movement, just so it's like they're part of the group. You don't have to do that, but that is a way you could include them. I wouldn't toss the ball to the 6-week-old and anticipate good results.
Thank you.
All right, so that's the 4th bullet on here, posting one of these activities you've tried to Facebook, getting your director's permission for if you show any photos of people that are not you. All right, and the last bullet point is CS2A, writing about physical development. All right, I want you to make a note on here. Make a note on this required homework, the bullet points, and maybe it's putting a star or something, or marking it in some fashion, the things that you need to email me, okay? I want you to email me a picture of CS2A. I want you to email me a picture of your fine motor activity and a picture of your gross motor activity written up. Not like the picture of, hey, we're doing it, it's great, but the written activity. Because I'm going to check and see if you need to add anything and help you clean it up for your notebook. It's not to be judgy, it's to clean it up, to make it presentable, so at the end of this that you're proud of your notebook and are confident in it. All right, so that's a lot of writing assignments. Usually you have one. Today or this week you have trois. So I actually think I pronounced that right. So let's flip to where we have the first activities. After the family questionnaire, after the bibliography. It's right after the bibliography was. You have a fine motor, a gross motor, and then after that you have competency statement 2A. Do you all see those 3 papers? So you have the fine motor paper, the gross motor paper, and the competency statement 2A. If I were you, I would leave it open to the gross motor one, because we're gonna have a whack at that together right now. So this one, ooh, knocking stuff over. It says gross motor, looks like this. You don't have to take it out of here. I would prefer that you write on a scratch sheet of paper for our example, because odds are you're going to do a different one that's appropriate for your classroom. And I think, so put like a page marker or something there if you need to. And we're gonna go back real quick because I need to tell you something. In this agenda, so we are looking at the agenda, the page 1. Turn it to the last page of the syllabus, the last page of the agenda, and look at the bottom of it. It should have something, a little chart that looks like that. Does everybody see their little chart on the last page of the syllabus or the agenda? It has a little chart. Find your chart. It's at the bottom of page 3 of your agenda. Does everybody have it? Let me know in the chat if you can't find it. Yes. Lydia, what?
I was just saying yes.
Wonderful. Okay. The reason this chart exists, let me share it with you. So you have, let's count the columns. The columns are the up and down. Science and sensory, language and literacy, creative arts, fine motor, gross motor, self-concept, emotional skills and regulation, social skills, and math. That's 9. I'm counting 9. Do you agree with me? Okay, there are 9. Now let's look at the rows. There's a row for young infants, a row for mobile infants, and a row for toddlers. That's 3. Do you agree? 9 divided by 3 is what? Okay, so one of the requirements of this book says that you need to have 3 activities for young infants, 3 activities for mobile infants, and 3 activities for toddlers. So if you need to make yourself a note next to young infants, mobile infants, and toddlers, do it. Each of those needs 3. I am not going to tell you which ones you have to pick to do young infants. I'm not going to tell you which ones you have to pick to do mobile infants or which ones you have to pick to do toddlers. I'm going to let you choose, but I need you to make sure each one of them gets 3. So this is your checklist. So after you do the gross motor activity, you need to make a check mark of which age group you chose to do it for. So Heather, you gave the example that you have a non-mobile infant in your classroom, you have a mobile infant in your classroom, and you don't have any toddlers. Okay? You still have to do 3 toddler activities, even if you don't have those kids in your classroom. You have to create the activity. Okay? If you choose to do a different activity with your mobile because you don't have that age group, that's fine. Because let's say you chose to do for science and sensory a toddler activity. But when it's time to actually do it with your kids, it's not age appropriate, right? Because you don't have toddlers. So you're gonna have to modify it to do in your classroom, but you still have to get the 3 for each age group. I know this is confusing, I apologize. We're going to go over it multiple times, but this is the first time I'm sharing it with you. I'm going to share it each time we do an activity to remind you. So if you have a toddler classroom, you don't have young infants and you don't have mobile infants. You still have to do 3 activities for each of them. You still have to write. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. You still have to write 3 activities for each of them. Does anybody have, Yvette, is that a question?
Yes.
What's up?
Okay, so you were saying that even though we don't have that class, whichever class, we still have to write for them. For that.
Yeah, you still have to write it.
If, for example, what's gonna work for the toddlers, right? Not what, for example, we're writing about 3 things about toddlers for toddlers, not what works for our class.
Yep, so all of you have a specific age group you're working with, okay? And odds are your age group is not going to fit at least one of these. You still have to write 3, 3, and 3. Because they want to see that you understand how to look up the developmental goals for each of these age groups and make an appropriate activity to get your CDA. I hope that makes sense. Juliet?
Okay, and then how many do we actually have to like put into practice with our age group?
Each week we're going to put one of them into practice.
Okay.
So let's say this week, for example, we're writing a gross motor and a fine motor. That's 2 activities, right?
Okay.
And you can choose your age group. So if you want to start with your age group for the first one, that's fine.
Okay, so eventually we'll be doing like all 9 pretty much.
Yep, all 9 of them are required and they want you to do 3 in each age group. Write 3 in each age group.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I apologize for going back on that. I thought it was a big point though that we needed to make sure we were all together on. I'm now looking again at my gross motor outdoor learning experience page. So if we have to do 3, 3, and 3, we have to choose which age group we're going to do first, correct? And in order to choose that, I'm going to go to a specific website. Now, remember when we did the CDC guidelines, when we were looking at those? And it talked about things that children can typically do at different ages. That's one place you can look. Another place you can look is Little Texans Big Futures. So if, Heather, I see your face right now. Are you seeing the internet pulled up Little Texans Big Futures? Great. So I typed in Google search Little Texans Big Futures. You may want to make a note of that for yourself somewhere. Little Texans Big Futures. And when I do that, this comes up. And it's from childrenslearninginstitute.org, Little Texans Big Futures. So I'm going to click on this. And it has guidelines. I have the choice of downloading them in English, Spanish, and I think that's Vietnamese. I cannot speak that language. I'm going with English. All right. So for this class, you will be using this resource quite a bit. So if you would like, you could download it to like your phone or your computer or something like that, so you don't have to search for it each time. It's your choice. Early learning guide for infants, toddlers, and 3-year-olds, which aligns really well with our 0 to 36 month class. All right, you will notice. Wait a minute, Heather, can you see the downloaded document on your screen? Great. You will notice that it's divided up into sections like your textbook. It has physical health and motor development, like you have a physical chapter, social and emotional development, language and communication, cognitive. So we're going to start in physical and motor development today because that's the chapter we're doing. So it looks like gross motor skills starts on page 26. So I'm going to find page 26. Gross motor skills, we have arrived. All right, let's, for funsies, look at each of these age groups and then pick which one we're going to use to write the example. All right, so I'm going to, let me make this bigger for you, for those of you that are on a telephone that are going like this right now. So 0 to 8 months are your young infants age group, okay? 8 to 18 months is your mobile infant age group. And then 18 to 36 months is your toddler age group. And it's broken up for you here, very conveniently. So let's look at the different developmental goals or the different things that we would expect in development and pick one of these age groups to do a gross motor with. So I'm looking at 0 to 8 months. It says the first one, turn their head from side to side and shake and wiggle their arms and legs, lift their head and shoulders, roll or try to move towards a toy, scoot forward or backward, begin to sit with support, bat at or kick at toys or things hanging over them. Okay, so if you were going to write one for young infants, you would pick one of these that makes sense to you. So Heather, you said you have young infants. Out of these, if you were going to write a gross motor lesson plan, which one do you think you might try to accomplish?
Possibly bat or kick at the toys, things
That
hanging
seems like
over.
one that you could set up an activity for, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Some of these you're like, yeah, I can't think of an activity for that, or why would I do an activity for that? That's okay. And to help you even further, so Heather said she would probably pick this bat at or kick at toys or something hanging over them. Let's look in this column. As a caregiver, and it's giving you ideas, right? So as a caregiver, You could get infants' attention by calling their names or offering a favorite toy. You could give the infants frequent tummy time while staying close to them and noticing when infants begin to lift their head and shoulders. You can place toys within and just beyond the reach of the babies, encouraging them to reach for them, which is where I'm thinking you were going with that, Heather. You could hold infants in your lap and provide plenty of time for them to sit up and watch and see if they notice the world around them. And then the last one says, provide toys that make sounds.
So really, I could have put 2 in there. So the ones that make sounds you can hang, and then the other ones where it's just in reach and beyond reach.
Sure. And the making sound thing could also be for if you're wanting them to turn their head, you know, to put something of interesting sound over here and see if you can get them to react to it. So if you were doing an infant one, a baby, this is where you would pick. If you wanted to do mobile infant, this is what you'd look at. Sit up and maintain balance while playing with the toy. Crawl on hands and knees. Use furniture to pull themselves up. Cruise and lower themselves from standing to sitting. Walk on their own with increasing speed. Does anybody here, since we have already put Heather on the spot, does anybody here have mobile infants that would like to choose one of these that they would work with?
Yes.
Miss Yvette, which one do you think would be appropriate to write a gross motor lesson plan with?
I got crawls, hands and knees.
Okay, so you would pick the crawling one to encourage them to crawl. So let's,
go ahead.
Or which one?
Or use the furniture to pull themselves up, because they do that a lot.
Okay, so those are 2 that you could choose for gross motor. Let's see what it says, what ideas it gives you as a caregiver. Interact, play with, and offer an assortment of toys while they're sitting. Encourage them to move to get what they want. So that could be one for crawling, right? Support older infants' movements by providing opportunities such as steps, grass, soft climbing toys. Provide toys that support movement and action with the feet, legs, arms, or hands. Notice when older infants begin to sit without support, pull on things to stand, walk along furniture, take steps. So if you were going to do a gross motor one of the things it tells you here, it could be for the crawling that you get a toy that they really like and place it within crawling distance and encourage them to crawl to it. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
Great. So if you were doing toddler, some of the gross motor things are walk easily or run from place to place, jump into puddles, piles of leaves or sandboxes, climb on chairs, stools, and/or playground equipment, enjoy playing on slides and swings, kick or throw a large ball towards another child or adult, climb stairs one step at a time. Who here has 18 to 36-month-old toddlers?
I do.
All right, Miss Lydia, which one do you think you would choose to write a gross motor activity?
I would choose the enjoy playing on slides and swing, because we have that at the school.
Got some slides?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And
So
it's a slide that's on the hill, and then it's a slide so they can climb up and then go down.
I love a good hill slide. All right, as a caregiver, you can play with toddlers indoors and outdoors and observe their ability to run, jump, and climb. You can encourage toddlers to play on different kinds of fun things at playgrounds and parks. You can create opportunities for toddlers to play with other children. Okay, so if you were writing a gross motor, it sounds like you would do something around the slide and maybe make a song or something to go down the slide, or make some sort of activity where you're like, oh, let's go down the slide and see how many, how many times we can go down the slide, or how fast we're going down the slide, or how we're going to position our body to go down the slide. Because sometimes they want to go head first, sometimes they want to go butt first, feet first. Got options. Okay.
Miss
Yes.
Lily, I have a question.
Yes.
With the slide, because normally what I do is I kind of chase them, but I kind of give them like a couple of feet away from them, and then I tell them like, I'm gonna come and get you, so they all run to the hill and then go down the slide. Can that be like an activity like that I do with them, or would that not really be so much?
So it sounds to me like the chasing thing would be separate from the slide thing. So that if you were doing that one, maybe it is the, let's see, the run from place to place.
Say the bag.
Oh, okay.
So that theoretically could be your activity, that you're playing chase with the children outside, with the adult as it, playing a game of it where the adult plays chase. And your goal then would be run from place to place easily. So you're giving them practice running.
Okay.
All right, so what I'm going to share with you now is we're gonna take a vote, and let's vote in the chat. Do you choose? We're going to do the first one all together. Okay, let's vote in the chat. You can choose young infant, mobile infant, or toddler. Everybody vote in the chat. Young infant, mobile infant, or toddler. It looks like it's a toss-up between mobile infant and toddler. I'm going to go back. And just take a look and pick one randomly. I think I like the idea of encouraging crawling. So we're going to do the first one on mobile infant. The example. So let's do the example on a piece of scratch paper. We're not going to do it on our gross motor learning experience plan. We're going to do it on a piece of scratch paper. You share screen, gross motor learning experience. All right, let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, great. Heather, I see your face. Do you see the gross motor learning experience on the screen? Great. All right. Learning objective, that's what we just discussed. So I'm going to go and pull. I'm going to copy and paste because I'm on the computer and I can do that. I'm going to copy and paste for older infants. It says crawl on hands and knees. Copy. And that's our learning objective. Okay, do you see where I put that on here? Right here, crawl on hands and knees. So on your scratch piece of paper, you can just put it near it so you can see what, the different parts are. But you have to have a learning objective. When I was teaching at university, one of the main things we taught people in the curriculum course was to start with your objective. Don't just pick an activity because it's cute. Pick something that'll meet the needs of the children. So you know what the needs are because you just look them up. And I'm going to put, for our age group, it was mobile infants. You need to put which age groups these are because your person that's coming to check your note. Go back. I'm going to put mobile I because it doesn't fit on there right now with what I'm doing. So maybe if I write it smaller.
On the top, if you have ruler, you can adjust where the age group is, the indentation. You can move it and it'll allow you to expand that space.
Okay, I just cheated though and just made it smaller for right now. Totally get what you said, and that would probably work better. All right, so I put mobile infants here because that's my age group, and I'm going to go on my chart. You know, when I get it done and put it in my binder, I'm going to go on my chart and mark that I did mobile infants for gross motor outdoor learning experience. The date of the lesson, this honestly doesn't matter. I'm going to put today's date. No, I also could have just moved that back. Duh. Microsoft Word. Sometimes I love you, other times not so much. All right, so we have our lesson objective, crawl on hands and knees. And this one, they gave us an idea in the Texans Big Futures about how we could do that. Remember, it said you could put a toy, a desired toy, across the room and encourage the baby to crawl to it. So I'm gonna just generally write that here, and I might go back and change it. So this is just me thinking through it with you. So let's say we want to choose teacher, chooses desirable or favorite. We could say that too, favorite toy for, and if you have multiple infants in your classroom, great. If you have one, you could just name that one. If this is a make-believe classroom for you because you don't have mobile infants at all, then we'll just pretend you've got a lot of them. Teacher chooses favorite toy for mobile infant. Places, I should say teacher places, teacher places toy across the classroom on the floor. Teacher encourages mobile infant to crawl to toy. Now, if you have mobile infants, think about this with me for a minute. Let's say you did just grab that favorite toy, walk across the classroom, set it down, and then walked off to go change diapers or something, right? And you're encouraging the child while you're changing diapers, oh, go get your favorite toy, go get it, go crawl to it. Maybe they'll do it, maybe they won't. Because you're not participating really in the activity at that point, right? You've removed yourself from the situation, you're doing something else. If you really wanted that baby to crawl to that toy, what would you do as a teacher to make them crawl to that toy? You can't drag the baby along on the ground. That's not a choice. Don't do that. What could you do?
I'd get on the floor with the baby.
Crawl with them.
Okay, I'm hearing a couple different really good answers. One really good answer is you could get next to the baby and crawl next to them, crawl with them, right? And make it a team thing. We're doing it together. Another thing you could do is you could stand or crouch down on their level behind the toy, and they're coming to you and the toy now. That's super motivating, right? Because the teacher's calling me and she has my favorite toy. Yes, please. I want to play that game. So think about it. Teacher can either crawl side by side with the baby or call the baby from next to the toy. Does that make sense? It gives you two options. You play it by ear based on how your baby's responding. Now, you'll notice that this box I typed in says step-by-step procedures. Sometimes when something says step-by-step procedures, I'm tempted to do a number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. So I could do it like that. And that kind of makes it look a little easier to read. So let's say you had a substitute coming in to pretend to be you today and implement this activity. You need to make it explicit. You need to tell them, okay, if we want this to happen, this is what you need to do with my kids. All right. So I prefer personally to have the 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of step by step, because I think it's easier, because the teacher is not going to sit down if they're, let's be real. If you have a sub coming and looking at your lesson plans, they're not going to spend half an hour trying to figure out what your lesson plan means. It needs to just be boom, boom, boom. Okay. Now, one thing that I think is really important that we always, or most of the time, leave out of lesson plans is sharing with the children what's going to happen and why. Going back to our example of letting the baby know before you pick them up and move them, letting them know before you wipe their face, letting them know before it's time to transition, letting them know why we're doing an activity and what's happening is lovely. Absolutely lovely. Not only are you, for the kids that can understand and are a little bit older and, you know, need to know what's going on, that's great. But also it's giving you just an extra opportunity to share vocabulary with the kids, to talk to them in a purposeful way. So I put this box here because I think we should always include this in our lesson plans when we're sharing with the children. What are we doing? Why? So keeping in mind that we're talking to mobile infants and not an adult, how can we share with the baby? We're going to do some sort of activity that involves crawling on hands and knees. Does anybody have a suggestion of how we can share that?
Normally, I'll talk to my children and say, let's work on some skills today. Today, we're going to, I'll be like, let's work on our stabilization, you know, standing. Let's work on crawling. Let's get our sitting skills. Let's work on our skills.
Let's get those skills going. All right, I like it. So how would you introduce the activity? If you were doing it like Heather, you would say something to the effect of, let's practice our crawling skills. Now, if you decided you were going to be crawling next to the baby, you could say something like, let's practice our crawling skills together. It's also lovely if you share with the baby what you're doing. As an infant teacher, telling the baby what you are doing as you're doing it throughout the day should be part of your practice. So you could even tell them, I'm going to find a toy I know you really like. Let's crawl to it. Okay, so this is customizable. You put what you think would be appropriate for an infant, especially if it's your classroom, because you have those kids, you know what they understand, what level of explanation would be good for them. I'm going to look up here now. Since we have a goal and everything and we have an activity, I think we can come up with a title for it. Crawling for toys. You can be as creative as you want on a title. It's totally up to you. If you wanted to call it hunting for toys or whatever, right? The dynamic crawl time. Como quiere. All right, materials. Not a whole lot of materials necessary for this. You need to have some desirable toys, right? some motivating toys. So some toys that the crawler really enjoys. Yes, Alicia.
For example, I want to do mine with running and walking. So would open space be a material, or that's kind of like no?
That depends. So I forgot to mention one part of this that is required. Let me highlight it for you real quick. Do y'all see what part I highlighted? This one has to be set outdoor. Physical chapter is the only chapter where they tell you it has to be outside or inside. The rest of them you get to pick. This one has to be outside. You can still do a crawling activity outside though, so there's no problem with that. It might make a difference in how you choose to set up though, right, Alicia? So if you are doing it outside, maybe you don't have to clear an area. Maybe it's good to go already. Yes, Yvette?
What if it's like you know how the weather is not agreeing with us lately?
Yeah.
You were unable to do it outside. Do we still have to find one day?
You still have to write this as an outside activity. So there's a difference between writing something for your notebook and doing something as an activity in your classroom. You have to write these for different age groups. When you do them, it needs to suit your age level and your classroom and whatever kind of rain, sleet, snow is going on outside.
Okay, so for the materials, since it has to be outdoors, we would want to include like an outdoor blanket or such for
good idea
the crawler to be on.
It's a good idea. An outdoor blanket would be delightful. Some of your playgrounds might have that cushion, and that's not necessary for you. Some of you definitely need the blanket. Some of your crawlers might be old enough that they're almost ready to transition and they can off-road it. So if this is set up for your specific classroom, then make it specific for you. No, we're not even going to get into that. We have enough variables. We're not going to add more. All right, so let's go down. Follow up. All right. Follow up in general has to do with making the activity a part of a week-long learning experience. Okay, so it's not, we're going to practice crawling on Monday. For the rest of the week, I expect you to sit. So, what could we do for follow-up? We could do it in the classroom, right? So we could do a similar activity in classroom. And I could put bullet points for this because you don't have to write this in sentence format like we'd have to do on our competency statements. You can bullet point these things. So follow up, do the crawling activity in the classroom. If you are doing it outside more, maybe bring extra blankets outside to crawl farther. Does anybody else have a suggestion of how we could do a follow-up?
Strengthen their body. So like the crawling motion, like strengthen their arms and legs.
I'm
like
open to
bicycles,
that.
like showing them to move their legs.
Okay, so put some, I'm trying to think of the crawling motion and what kinds of, so maybe this is through 18 months, however, so they could do riding toys and stuff. But they're still, this is for the kids that aren't walking yet. We do have some things in the classroom usually that if they're not a walker, they can still push and ride on sometimes. So variety of push and riding toys. It could be as simple as bringing in new plush toys to explore. Because if it's a new toy, they're going to be like, ooh, I do want to go to that and check it out. All right.
Could books work too? Like seeing like a crawling book?
Sure. Books about crawling. Totally. All right. The next part, how will I evaluate this activity? Evaluate is, how do I figure out if what I'm doing is working? I'm trying to help them practice crawling. How do I figure out, are they getting the practice? Is it working? Anybody?
Have them crawl to you.
So that they're crawling to you. So it's going to be you watching them, right? It's going to be observation. Are they doing it or not? Are they having difficulty with some part of this that I need to try to address? So it's going to be an observation. And I think it's lovely. Remember, we talked about printing out that CDC checklist for the different age groups. I think documenting when a child is a competent crawler is good. You know, that's something you need to know. What are the physical abilities of the children in my classroom? So I'm going to say observation and documentation on developmental chart. Does anybody need further explanation on that? Okay. If you're looking at the example in your book, you will notice it has a back page. Not in your book, I'm sorry, in your binder. Your activity sheet has a back page with these things on the back page. All right. Not all of these are always applicable, but sometimes they are. So we do our best to address them. So adaptations for children with special needs if needed. So think about your classroom. Are you in a mobile infant classroom? Heather is. Heather, do you have, and you can do a thumbs up or thumbs down. I don't want you to say it out loud because of the recording. In your classroom, do you have any children identified as having special needs? Okay. Because of that, since it is for her classroom specifically, her age group, she can just make a note, we don't have any children with special needs, or we do, and this is the special need, and this is how we're going to address it. For us that don't have mobile infants, and we're writing this just because we have to have 3 mobile infant ones, let's think. If a child is having difficulty, I spelled that wrong, crawling, provide more opportunities for, depends on their stage, right? Tummy time and scooting practice. So there are things developmentally that happen before you can crawl, right? If you've been in an infant classroom, you will notice, and it's quite weird, the children will start going backwards first. It's amazing. You're like, you're trying to go get that ball, but your body's moving in that direction. Quite funny. It's a pretty short stage of development for most kids, but well worth watching.
Okay, so if I have children that seem behind in their development, but technically aren't like diagnosed with any special needs,
Right.
you know, like the parents don't bring it to our attention or anything, should I
Things you're
still write
noticing.
something there? Should I still utilize that space?
I would use it for your classroom. If this is if this is an age group that fits your classroom, use the opportunity to think through these things. If you're noticing any kind of developmental delays, I highly recommend talking to your director and about the idea of using those developmental charts and sharing them with families as soon as possible so that they can get used to the idea that you're watching and documenting these things and that they can contribute. You know, at home, my kid's walking to me. And you're like, are they? Tell me more about that, because they're not even, you know, I've not seen this. How does, what's motivating them? How are they doing it? Are they holding onto your hands? That's good info to know. So this is your opportunity to think about, if you have this age group, how you can meet the needs in your classroom. If you don't have this age group, use that noggin and think about, in general, if this isn't working for some kids, what is the step right before it? How can I support them to get here? So the step right before it is maybe they're scooting. And that's good and fine and proper. Support them in scooting. You know, so build up what muscles you can with where they are, and then monitor that sucker. If they start getting, you know, talk with the families. I noticed they're scooting. Look, there's a developmental checklist. They're right here. They're scooting, they're scooting, they're scooting. It's now been 5 months. They're still scooting. I'm starting to become a little worried. I'm sharing it with the family. You know, they're scooting really well. I'm wondering why they're not using their knees yet. It's, you know, not developmentally quite where they should be. Do you think it's time to talk to your pediatrician? Maybe they have some suggestions on how to support them. So you're doing this as politically nice as you can, to not say, oh, your kid's screwed up, they're never going to walk. No. Being as caring as you are and being really specific. Yes, Alicia.
So for my activity, like I said before, I was gonna be walking and running. I do have children that do not walk yet. So what I put, it's not really a special needs, but like I would be.
You're adapting for the ones that can't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. But would I put that under that same area?
Sure. Special needs in this context doesn't mean they've been diagnosed with something or that they're not developmentally appropriate, right? It's for you have a wide range of development in your classrooms. So for the kids that can't, like Heather was saying, she has a baby that is freshly minted, freshly out of the oven. That baby is not going to be able to do this. What can she do with that baby to help them feel included? Adaptations for dual language learners if needed. So one of the easy ways you can adapt for a dual language learner, we talked about for labeling, having their family share with you some different words and how to pronounce them. So maybe you want to learn or ask the family the word for crawl and how to pronounce it. You don't just want to Google it, because different families, different cultures use different words. So it's best to use what the family uses at home for that. Possible connections to other topics. For gross motor, this is really kind of like, so we could do different ways to move our bodies. So scooting, kicking, rolling, that kind of thing. And you could also, somebody had mentioned the book. So you could put books about movement. You could put more push toys or more writing toys in the classroom. Or maybe you think it's time to add soft climbing blocks. Okay. I'm going to post this example on Facebook on our page. Okay, so don't worry, I will post it on there. Based on this, does everybody feel like you understand how to get an objective using the Little Texans Big Futures? I'm going to edit this and I'll put it on YouTube as well, so you can go back if you need the verbal scaffold for it. You can go back and listen to how to do that towards the end of it. I'm not going to do the fine motor one with you right now because we have 12 minutes because we spent so long making sure we did this one well. So now I'm going to talk about the reflective statement of competency, the CS2A, which is the next page in your book, in your textbook. Not your textbook, help me out, binder. Goodness gracious, people. I get there in the end with the words, but it takes me a minute. So Alicia, are you seeing the reflective statement of competence? Great. So everybody should have this paper. This has a specific format that you need to follow. It's going to require 2 paragraphs. This first bit, so get your pencil out if you need to, and let's make some notes on this so you remember what needs to happen. This first thing is 1 paragraph. The note that I want you to make for yourself, you can do it off to the side here if you want, is what this question is asking you is, in your classroom every day, how do you support physical development? The first paragraph. So if you need to do this, do it. Write down here, how I, lovely. Get rid of that. I don't like that. It makes me upset. We're going to go here instead and go down. So you could write to make a framework for yourself, how I support physical development in my classroom every day. And then, how do you support physical development in your classroom every day? Have a think on it. We have some page numbers to help you. So I can give you some page numbers that will help with this. And we are starting, let's see, page 178. So for this first part, page 178 and 179.
In the white book, correct?
Say again?
In the white book?
Yep, your textbook. So this page 178 and 179, if you look at it, if you open your book and look at it, which I highly recommend you do, it has some paragraphs, and at the top of each paragraph in bold, it gives you something you should be doing in your classroom. It says schedule time for extended periods of unstructured play. Plan opportunities for children to explore and develop their gross motor skills every day. Plan daily movement experiences. Introduce games that require children to use their large muscles. Incorporate gross motor activities into transitions. Make gross motor activities exciting and interesting. And then it tells you how to do that under each of these. So that's for gross motor. For fine motor, it's page 190 and 191. Okay. For 190 and 191, it talks to you about how to use fine motor skills. Because we are spending such a big chunk of the class on the activities, we didn't get to go into fine motor skills how I would like us to. Please read your textbook for the fine motor skills, because you're still going to need to know it and you have to write your activity for it. Okay. So your first paragraph is going to be how I support physical development in my classroom every day. You can use these pages to help you. And I recommend write at least 3 examples. So to do that, you'd pick 3 things from those pages that I gave you, and then how you do it. So let's say you picked offer materials to explore and manipulate. So that's what you picked. Then your next sentence is, these are the materials that I put out for children to explore and manipulate. You write the thing from the book for your first example, and then how your following sentence is how you actually do it. Same as we've been doing, okay? This is what I do. This is what I use in my classroom to do it. For example, offer materials to explore and manipulate. That's what it says verbatim in your textbook. I'm going to write it so it's more sentencey. I'm going to say, I offer materials to explore and manipulate for fine motor development. So now, after you've said you do that, prove it. How do you do that? My classroom has a small toy area, and I offer Play-Doh in the art area. Does anybody have a question about how you offer an example from the book, and then your next sentence is prove it? What do you do? So this first part is straight from the textbook. I made it into a sentence though. The next part is the example from my classroom, how I do it. Okay, so you're gonna do 3 of those. In the next paragraph, it's gonna be this, okay? It says, pick one of your learning experiences. You're only gonna have 2 to pick from. You're only creating 2. You're creating a fine motor and a gross motor. So you have to pick one of those. It's necessary because those are the only 2 you have. You have to pick one. I'm going to copy this down here. For our second paragraph. And remember to indent on your paragraphs so people can tell where one paragraph ends and another begins. You're going to pick either your gross motor or fine motor activity to discuss. And this is what you're going to discuss. How does, I may even put a bigger space so it's more obvious. How does this experience, so your gross motor or your fine motor, reflect your philosophy of how to support young children's physical development? So again, go to those same pages. Okay, go to those same exact pages and find 3 things, 3 examples from your activity. So I'm going to put the same pages. Those same pages. 3 examples of how it works in your activity. So I'm going to look on the gross motor section because we just created the gross motor activity together and start it. All right, so one of my examples for the gross motor activity, for my gross motor activity, I support physical development by, or maybe just that. I plan daily movement experiences. So that's what I pulled from the book, plan daily movement experiences. Now I'm going to support that with how my activity did that. My activity plans for the mobile infant to crawl across a blanket. Okay, so that's one example. I want 3. So we could also say, make gross motor activities exciting and interesting. I make, or this activity is exciting for the infant. So that's from the book, right? Make it exciting or interesting. So that's my sentence to make it exciting and interesting. And now I'm going to say how. I am using one of the baby's favorite toys and actively crawling with the baby. Okay, and my third example is, let's see, which one am I going to choose? Challenge children to expand their skills. This activity will challenge the children to expand their skills. I plan to use multiple blankets to expand the crawl space so they get more practice. Okay, do you all see how I picked 3 from the book and supported it with how we're doing it in the lesson? I will also put this example, and I'm going to move this second paragraph to another page. And maybe I should write paragraph 1 and 2. Yes, Alicia. Did you have a question? Just going to sleep on me. That's fine. So in paragraph 1, and then down here I'm going to put paragraph 2. Do I really want you to write paragraph 1 and 2 on here? No. Somebody is going to anyway, though, because I'm putting it on the example. Okay, so I'm going to put this on YouTube as well. All right, now for everybody, we've moved to study time. Thank you for staying with me through this to get your examples done. If on study time today, you would like to help me pick your objective with you or help you think through your activity, I'm more than willing to do that. If you want me to help you think through how to write your competency statement, that's fine. If you receive feedback from me from a previous assignment and you're like, miss that feedback, makes no sense, now's your time to get it face to face. All right. I will stay on here as long as somebody's on with me. When the last person logs off, I'm going to eat lunch. I'm not going to just hang out here to look at myself.